You touch it 2,617 times a day. Your smartphone. It is not a tool. It is a highly engineered digital slot machine. It lives in your pocket. It tracks your every move. Have you ever wondered why the world's most powerful tech billionaires strictly forbid their own children from using the very products they create? They know the terrifying truth. They deeply understand the underlying psychological architecture they built. They know exactly how human free will is systematically hijacked and relentlessly monetized. This is not about weak willpower. It is about a weaponized behavioral framework that physically rewires the chemistry of your human brain. The exact mechanics of this psychological code will completely change how you view your own daily routines, but we will reveal that hidden structure a little later. We live in a ruthless attention economy. Human focus is the single most valuable commodity on the planet. But in the chaotic early days of the internet, capturing that attention was incredibly difficult. Companies built massive, highly complex websites and desperately hoped people would visit. Today, that entire passive model is completely dead. Enter Instagram, TikTok, and the modern social media titans. They do not just ask politely for your attention. They literally manufacture your behavior. So how did a simple photo-sharing app successfully weaponize human dopamine to command trillions of dollars in market capitalization? That is the exact question we are answering today. Look back at the software landscape of the early 2000s. It was a massive graveyard of completely forgotten platforms. Companies were actively bleeding users. They would spend millions of dollars acquiring a single customer, only to watch them vanish forever after exactly 3 days. This was the terrifying, existential dip in the J-curve of the digital age. Silicon Valley was absolutely panicking. The traditional business model of creating a good product and simply waiting for brand loyalty completely collapsed. They realized a devastating truth. Functionality was absolutely not enough. Pure utility does not ever guarantee corporate survival. They needed something much deeper. They needed compulsion. They needed to systematically study the darkest, most vulnerable corners of human behavioral psychology. To successfully solve this massive attrition crisis, software engineers turned to a behavioral designer named Eyal. He introduced a deeply groundbreaking concept: the hook model. This model is a continuous, relentless 4-step psychological loop. It begins precisely with the trigger. External triggers are painfully obvious. A push notification loudly pings. A red badge icon aggressively flashes. But external triggers are fundamentally weak. They are annoying. The absolute genius of the trillion-dollar app is strictly mastering the internal trigger. They tightly attach their digital product to a deeply negative human emotion: boredom, loneliness, deep uncertainty. When you vividly feel a microscopic pang of social anxiety, what do? You do not think. You automatically reach for your phone. The app successfully bonds itself directly to your deepest emotional vulnerabilities. But feeling an intense emotion is absolutely not enough to generate billions in revenue. The user must actively act. This introduces the highly critical second phase of the loop: the action. Human beings are deeply, fundamentally lazy creatures. If a digital action strictly requires burning calories or intense cognitive load, we will simply abandon it entirely. Therefore, the required action must be aggressively brain-dead simple. A single tap, an effortless swipe, an infinite thoughtless scroll. Stanford behavioral researcher B.J. Fogg mathematically proved that human behavior strictly requires absolute operational simplicity. The global tech giants violently stripped away every single ounce of user friction. You absolutely do not have to search for content anymore. The highly advanced algorithm aggressively spoon-feeds it directly into your visual cortex. Now we reach the most incredibly powerful, highly dangerous phase of the entire framework. The variable reward. This is the exact, devastating mechanism that completely broke human willpower. Back in the 1950s, renowned psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something profoundly disturbing about animal behavior. If you give a lab mouse a food pellet every single time it precisely presses a lever, the mouse eventually gets incredibly bored. It completely stops pressing. But if you give the mouse a food pellet only sometimes, at completely random intervals, the mouse utterly loses its mind. It will aggressively press the lever until it collapses from absolute physical exhaustion. Predictability aggressively kills human desire. Variability relentlessly manufactures human obsession. When you blindly open Instagram, you do not actually know what you will see. You might see a highly boring ad. You might see a beautiful, engaging travel photo. You might see a massive, highly controversial argument. It is the exact, precise psychological mechanism as a Las Vegas slot machine. You pull the digital lever to intensely see if you won the absolute dopamine jackpot. But the psychological cycle is still entirely not complete. The absolute masterpiece of the hook model is the final, inescapable phase. The investment. Most traditional companies aggressively ask for your hard-earned money. Social media companies secretly ask for your free labor. Every single time you leave a comment, upload a photo, or curate your highly personalized profile, you are actively doing highly valuable work for the massive platform. This heavily triggers a deeply powerful psychological phenomenon known widely as the IKEA effect. We irrationally and aggressively overvalue things we physically help build. By constantly forcing you to invest your personal data, your entire social reputation, and your precious human memories into their digital platform, the app essentially holds your digital identity completely hostage. The more you use it, the exponentially harder it is to ever leave. You are completely trapped in the loop. So what is the ultimate, terrifying revelation here? What specifically makes this strategy so unbelievably effective? It is the profound realization that the digital product is absolutely no longer the software itself. The product is the human habit. The hook model flawlessly and aggressively connects a user's emotional problem to a company's digital solution with enough rapid frequency to form a permanent, unthinking habit. It completely, surgically bypasses your conscious, logical brain. You absolutely do not decide to open the app. Your highly trained neurological pathways simply execute a deeply entrenched behavioral program. And that is the secret. Trillion-dollar digital empires are strictly not built on superior back-end coding or slightly better visual aesthetics. They are heavily built on the ruthless, mathematical exploitation of human behavioral psychology. They completely own your automatic human reflexes. But this incredibly profound psychological framework is absolutely not inherently evil. It is merely a highly efficient, mathematically proven behavioral mechanism. It is exactly like gravity. It simply exists. The real, massively pressing question is how we actually apply this hard behavioral science to environments outside of highly superficial consumer apps. Think deeply about the massive, agonizing crisis inside the modern corporate workplace. Companies completely and spectacularly fail to implement the hook model where it actually matters the absolute most. They spend billions of dollars on highly clunky, deeply complex internal software, and they are constantly baffled when busy employees entirely refuse to adopt it. The internal digital friction is absolutely suffocating. The daily employee experience is entirely broken precisely because legacy, corporate tools completely ignore fundamental human psychology. This is exactly why massively successful modern organizations must entirely rethink their internal digital platforms. You absolutely need a highly sophisticated system that ethically and flawlessly applies the exact psychology of engagement to elevate your human workforce, rather than exploit them. This is exactly where PulseMina HCM completely changes the entire corporate paradigm. PulseMina HCM is absolutely not just another highly rigid, intensely boring human resources database. It is beautifully and systematically designed with the exact same core principles of frictionless human action and positive behavioral investment that make massive consumer apps so incredibly intuitive. It seamlessly and ethically builds highly positive organizational habits. Whether it is transparent, engaging performance tracking, or highly streamlined internal communication, PulseMina HCM aggressively removes the painful digital friction from the entire employee experience. It is the highly guarded operational secret weapon for modern companies that desperately want to actively build a truly engaged, highly productive workforce entirely without relying on outdated, incredibly frustrating legacy software. Ultimately, the absolute genius of the hook model definitively proves a highly fundamental law of modern digital strategy. The modern company that successfully owns the human habit will unconditionally and absolutely dominate the global market. You completely cannot simply build a logical, rational argument for why a human being should use your digital product. You must aggressively and flawlessly engineer the precise psychological environment that absolutely makes using your product completely and utterly inevitable. If you learned something incredibly new today, hit the like button and subscribe for more elite strategy breakdowns. And let us precisely know in the comments below what massive company's hidden strategy should we completely unlock next.